Picture this. You do everything right. You show up early, stay late, hit every deadline, and produce genuinely good work. Then review season comes around, and someone else gets the promotion. Someone you've watched coast through meetings, charm the room, and somehow always be in the right place at the right time. And you're left sitting there thinking, what exactly is the game here? And why does nobody explain the rules? Today we're talking about the hidden rules of office survival, the ones that actually determine who rises, who stagnates, and who gets quietly pushed out. These are the rules nobody writes down, nobody teaches in your onboarding session, and nobody warns you about until it's already too late. Let's start with the biggest lie you were told before you ever walked into your first job. The lie is this: work hard, do good work, and success will follow. Now, is hard work important? Absolutely. But here's the brutal truth most people only learn after years of confusion and disappointment. Being competent at your job is the entry fee, not the winning ticket. It gets you in the door. It keeps you employed. But by itself, it almost never determines who advances and who doesn't. What actually determines your trajectory is something far more uncomfortable to talk about. And that's the difference between being good at your job and being known as good at your job by the people who decide your future. Here's a simple scenario. Two people work side by side. Their output is nearly identical in quality. One sends a short weekly summary to their manager, just a few bullet points covering what they worked on and what they accomplished. The other person assumes their results speak for themselves and sends nothing. 6 months later, one of them needs to be let go due to budget cuts. The manager doesn't sit down and carefully audit every project from the past 2 quarters. What they do have is a clear, recent mental picture of one employee's contributions and a blurry, vague impression of the other. The person with the paper trail stays, the invisible worker goes. And here is what makes this so devastating. The person who got cut may have worked just as hard, maybe harder. The difference was never about performance. It was about perception. This is rule number 1 of office survival. Invisible work does not count. You might be solving problems nobody else is even aware of. You might be holding entire systems together behind the scenes. But if the people in power don't see it, don't hear about it, and can't point to it, it doesn't exist in any meaningful career sense. You are not being evaluated on an objective ledger of tasks completed. You are being evaluated on a feeling, a vague but powerful impression of your value that your manager and key decision makers carry around in their heads. That feeling is built from fragments. A comment you made in a meeting 3 months ago, the time you stayed late to help someone, the way you responded when a project went sideways. These small moments accumulate into a story, and that story shapes every decision that affects your career. Now let's talk about credit. This is the part that genuinely stings. You put in the hours on a project. You solve the hard problems. Then someone else presents the work in a meeting, answers the questions, gets the congratulations afterward. A few months pass, and that project lives in everyone's memory as their success. You feel cheated because you were. But here's the cold part. Credit doesn't automatically travel to whoever did the most work. Credit flows to whoever communicated the work. It goes to the person who stood up in front of the room, sent the summary email, narrated the story of what happened and why it mattered. This is not a fair system, but understanding it is far more useful than resenting it. Rule number 2 is that communication is ownership. If you're not the one narrating your own contributions, someone else will narrate them, or more likely, they simply won't get narrated at all. This doesn't mean taking credit you don't deserve or being obnoxious about self-promotion. It means making a habit of clearly documenting what you're working on, what you've accomplished, and what value it's creating. Brief status updates, follow-up emails after key conversations, speaking up in meetings when you have something relevant to add. These aren't political games. They're the minimum necessary to make your work visible to the people who make decisions about your career. Let's shift to something even more uncomfortable: relationships. A lot of high performers flinch at this part because it sounds like networking, and networking feels fake and exhausting. But here's what's actually happening when you ignore relationships at work. Decisions about projects, promotions, opportunities, and resources are all made by human beings. And human beings trust people they know, not people they've vaguely heard of, not people whose work they've admired from a distance, people they've actually interacted with, built context with, seen handle difficult moments. When your manager needs to pick someone for a stretch assignment, they're not running an objective analysis. They're mentally scanning for someone they trust. And trust is built through dozens of small moments over time, not through a single impressive project. Rule number 3. Being known as a person matters more than being known as a performer. This isn't about forcing yourself to be social if you're naturally introverted. It's about being present enough to exist in people's minds as a real human with judgment and personality, not just a productivity unit who shows up and executes. Do you ever just ask a colleague how their project is going? Do you offer to help when you can see someone is struggling? Do you show up to the conversations that don't directly benefit you? These things build the relational equity that quietly shapes your reputation in ways no amount of solo effort ever could. Now let's talk about something that trips up some of the most talented people in any organization: the trap of taking on too much. There is a specific pattern that plays out over and over in workplaces everywhere. A capable person, usually someone known for getting things done, gets presented with a significant opportunity. A high-visibility project, a chance to lead something cross-functional, an invitation to step into a gap. It sounds like career advancement. Often it's framed that way explicitly. And because this person is ambitious and conscientious and wants to prove themselves, they say yes. 6 months later, they're working unsustainable hours, being held accountable for problems they didn't create, and watching the person who handed them the project get promoted while casually mentioning the initiative they launched. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how organizations naturally route high-effort, low-reward work toward whoever will absorb it without pushing back. Rule number 4. Saying yes to everything is not ambition. It's exposure. Before you commit to anything significant, understand what you're actually signing up for. What resources come with this? Who is accountable if things go wrong? What are you giving up by taking this on? Will this work actually be visible and credited in a way that builds your career? Or will it keep you buried in execution while others are doing the strategic work that gets rewarded? Asking these questions isn't being difficult, it's being smart. The people who advance consistently aren't the ones who absorb everything thrown at them. They're the ones who choose deliberately and negotiate the terms of their involvement. Here's another rule that rarely gets discussed. Timing is a genuine skill. You can have the right idea, the right ask, the right case for a promotion or a new project, and it can still go nowhere simply because you raised it at the wrong moment. Pitching a bold new initiative right after your company announces cost-cutting is a fundamentally different conversation than pitching it during a growth phase. Asking for a promotion when your manager is overwhelmed and stressed is different from asking when things are calm and there's momentum behind your recent work. Context doesn't change the quality of your work or your argument, but it dramatically changes how it lands. Rule number 5. Read the room before you make your move. Most people ignore context almost completely. They assume that a strong enough case will cut through any situation at any time. It won't. And there's a related dynamic here that's equally counterintuitive. Proximity to success matters enormously. If you're part of a project that wins, you benefit even if your role was modest. If you're attached to something that fails, it leaves a mark even if the failure had nothing to do with you. Organizations remember associations more than they remember specifics. So being thoughtful about which projects and which people you align yourself with is not cynical calculation. It's strategic awareness. Now let's talk about what happens when you have a boss who isn't just indifferent to your career, but is actively making it harder. A genuinely toxic manager is one who takes credit for your work, shifts blame onto you, contradicts themselves, and then denies it. and creates an environment where you're constantly on the back foot. The first and most important thing to understand is that this behavior is almost never actually about you. Toxic leadership patterns come from that person's own insecurities, their relationship with power, and habits they've probably had for their entire career. The moment you make it personal, you've already lost, because you'll react emotionally, and emotional reactions are exactly what this type of person is most comfortable exploiting. Rule number 6. Document everything when you're in a difficult situation. After important conversations, send a brief email summarizing what was discussed and what you committed to. Not in an accusatory way, just a professional follow-up. This serves two purposes. It creates a paper trail that protects you if things escalate, and it signals clearly to the other person that you are paying attention and keeping records. When you know you have documentation, you also carry yourself differently. You're not anxious or second-guessing yourself. You have evidence. That confidence changes the dynamic. Let me bring this all together. The hidden rules of office survival come down to a few things that the system assumes you'll figure out on your own, usually by failing first. Your work needs to be visible to the right people, not just completed. Relationships determine who trusts you when opportunities arise. Your reputation is built from dozens of small moments, not one big achievement. Timing and context shape how your contributions and requests are received. Choosing what to take on is as important as how well you execute. And when the environment itself becomes toxic, documentation and strategic detachment become your most important tools. None of this means you have to become someone you're not. It doesn't mean playing dirty or becoming a political animal. It means understanding the actual system you're operating in instead of the ideal system you were told existed. The people who thrive long-term in organizations aren't the ones who burn themselves out executing invisible work. They're the ones who understood that performance and visibility and relationships and timing all operate together, and they managed all of them with intention. So here's the challenge. Pick one thing from today. Maybe it's starting to send a brief weekly update to your manager. Maybe it's speaking up in one meeting where you would normally have stayed quiet. Maybe it's finally having a real conversation with a colleague instead of just exchanging task updates. Small shifts, done consistently, change how you're perceived, and changed perception opens doors that raw talent alone never will. The game was always about more than the work. Now you know the rules. Start playing accordingly.